Elena Vasquez had never thought of herself as scary, but the way the alien children looked at her told a different story. Their large eyes watched her every move like she was something dangerous, something that might pounce at any moment, and she found it both sad and a little bit funny. She was just a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms, and she had volunteered to help supervise a school field trip because she wanted humanity to look good in the eyes of the Galactic Concord. Humans were new to this whole space community thing, and they needed all the positive attention they could get. The space station called Gentle Harmony floated in the darkness between 3 star systems, and it served as a meeting place for dozens of alien species who had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before humans even invented fire. Elena felt small here, but she also felt honored to be one of the few humans allowed to work alongside these ancient civilizations. Teacher Malivas clicked her mandibles in greeting as Elena approached the group of children gathered near the entrance to the nature preservation deck. Malivas was a Sithrani, a species that looked like tall praying mantises made of glass, and her movements were so delicate that Elena always worried about accidentally breaking her. "Human, Elena," Malivas said through her translator device. "We are grateful for your assistance today. Though I must admit the children are nervous about being so close to a predator species." Elena smiled, keeping her teeth hidden because she had learned that showing teeth was a threat display for most Concord species, and she knelt down to be closer to the children's level. "I promise I am very friendly," she said softly, "and I brought snacks from Earth that I think you might like." The children numbered 27 in total, and they came from 5 different species. There were the Korvathi, who looked like small feather balls with big curious eyes, the Drelnik, who were basically sentient jelly creatures, the Ithrani, whose bodies were made of living crystal, and several others whose names Elena was still learning. One tiny Korvathi with bright blue feathers hopped closer to Elena and tilted his head, and his translator chirped out his words in a squeaky voice. "Why do your eyes face forward like that?" he asked, and Elena could hear genuine curiosity mixed with fear. "So I can see things that are right in front of me very well," Elena explained gently. "Like how I can see what a beautiful color your feathers are." The little Kovathi puffed up with pride at the compliment, and some of the other children giggled in their various ways. Elena felt warmth in her chest because she had always loved children, even alien ones who thought she might eat them. Teacher Malivas led the group through the large doors and into the nature preservation deck, which was a massive indoor forest designed to feel like a gentle paradise. The trees were engineered to be soft and harmless. The streams contained only pure filtered water, and the temperature was kept at a perfect, comfortable level for all species. Elena thought it was beautiful, but also strange. On Earth, nature was wild and dangerous and unpredictable, but here in the Concord, they had made nature into something tame and controlled. The children spread out to explore under the watchful eyes of small floating camera drones, and Elena walked slowly among them, answering questions and helping the Drelnik children who kept accidentally merging together when they got too excited. "Human Elena," one of the Ithrani children chimed, her crystal body making soft musical sounds. "Is it true that your planet tries to kill you?" Elena laughed and then caught herself because her laugh sometimes startled people. "Yes, that is true," she admitted. "Earth has predators and diseases and natural disasters and poisonous plants and extreme temperatures, but we learned how to survive all of it." The children stared at her with something between horror and amazement, and she realized that to them, she was like a survivor of a war that had lasted for millions of years. The little blue Kovathi, whose name Elena learned was Peep, had become her unofficial shadow. He followed her everywhere, asking endless questions about Earth and humans and why she smelled like metal. "That is the iron in my blood," Elena told him. "Humans have iron inside us to help carry oxygen through our bodies." "You have metal inside you?" Peep chirped in astonishment. and several nearby children gathered closer to hear more before Elena could answer. A sound cut through the peaceful forest that made her heart freeze. It was an alarm, loud and harsh and repeating, and the lights overhead flickered from soft white to emergency red. Containment failure in adjacent sector. A calm automated voice announced, "Virax spore contamination detected. All personnel evacuate immediately. Emergency bulkheads activating in 30 seconds." Elena did not know what Virax spores were, but she saw Teacher Malivas suddenly collapse to the ground like her strings had been cut, and the children began to scream in their various languages. "Everyone come to me right now," Elena shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos, and the children ran toward her on instinct, their small bodies trembling with fear. The massive metal doors slammed shut with a boom that shook the floor, and Elena realized with growing horror that they were trapped. The air already tasted different, slightly sweet and thick, and she watched as some of the children began to cough and wheeze. She ran to Teacher Malivas and checked for breathing, but the Sithrani was barely alive, her glass-like body already showing cracks from whatever poison was in the air. Elena felt her own lungs burn slightly, like she had breathed in dust, but it was not unbearable. The station's emergency system spoke again. "Warning. Vorax spore concentration at lethal levels for all standard Concord species. Estimated time until critical exposure for juveniles, 8 to 15 minutes. Nearest safe zone is 2.7 kilometers through Corridor 7. Elena looked at the 27 terrified children huddled around her, and she looked at the sealed door that led to safety so far away, and she felt something wake up inside her. It was old. This feeling, older than civilization, older than language. It was the feeling of a protector facing impossible odds. The feeling of someone who refuses to let the small and helpless die. She did not have time to think. She did not have time to plan. She only had time to act. "Listen to me," she said to the children, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am going to get you out of here, all of you, but you need to trust me, and you need to hold on tight, no matter what happens." The children looked at her with their various eyes, and in that moment they did not see a scary predator from a death world. They saw something else entirely, something that their ancient instincts recognized, even if their minds did not. They saw a guardian. Elena grabbed the emergency blankets from the supply cabinet on the wall and spread them on the ground, her hand moving faster than she had ever moved before. And she pointed at the children and spoke with a voice that left no room for argument. "Everyone on the blankets. Curl up as small as you can, and do not let go of each other no matter what." The children obeyed, without question, because something in her tone told them that this was not a request. The Kovathi nestled together in fluffy balls. The Drelnik merged into one large mass to protect their cores, and the Ithrani linked their crystalline limbs together in chains. Elena wrapped the blankets around them and tied the corners together, creating makeshift bundles that she could carry. She strapped 2 bundles across her back using torn strips from her jacket. She cradled one bundle against her chest, and she carried 2 more in her arms. The total weight was about 40 kilograms, which was heavy but not impossible. And she took one deep breath of the poisoned air before she kicked open the maintenance door that led to Corridor 7. The hallway stretched out before her like a nightmare made real. Smoke filled the air from damaged systems. Debris covered the floor from ceiling panels that had fallen, and the emergency lights bathed everything in a red glow that made it look like the inside of a wound. 2.7 kilometers stood between her and safety, and the children had maybe 12 minutes before it killed them. Elena started to run, her legs pumped beneath her as she carried 40 kilograms of precious cargo through the smoke and the chaos. Her lungs burned from the spores, but she ignored the pain because pain was just a signal, and she could choose not to listen to it. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat, but she welcomed the surge of energy it gave her. The first obstacle came at the 300-meter mark. A support beam had collapsed across the corridor and blocked the entire path, and there was no way around it. Elena did not slow down. She spotted a maintenance panel in the wall beside the beam, and she drove her fist straight through the thin metal covering. The sharp edges sliced her palm open, and blood poured down her wrist, but she did not care. She grabbed the panel and ripped it away from the wall with a strength that came from somewhere deeper than muscle behind. The panel was a crawl space that ran parallel to the corridor, and Elena squeezed through with the children pressed against her body. The bundles scraped against pipes and wires, but she protected them with her own flesh, taking the cuts and bruises herself so they would not have to. She emerged on the other side of the beam and kept running at the 800-meter mark. One of the Corvathi children started to wheeze badly, and Elena could feel the small body struggling to breathe against her chest. She knew that the child was dying, that the spores were filling its tiny lungs and stealing its oxygen. She did not stop running. Instead, she shifted the bundle so she could see the child's face, and she recognized the bright blue feathers. It was Peep, the curious little one who had asked about her eyes. "Stay with me, Peep," she gasped between breaths. "You stay with me." But Peep's eyes were closing and his chest was not moving anymore. And Elena felt a rage build inside her that was hotter than any fire. She would not let this child die. She refused. She absolutely refused while still running. She tilted Peep's head back to open his airway, and she placed her mouth over his tiny beak, and she breathed into him. She forced her air into his lungs with controlled puffs between her own desperate gasps for breath. And she kept running, kept breathing, kept refusing to accept death at the 1-kilometer mark. A door had malfunctioned and sealed itself shut, and it was made of reinforced metal designed to contain hull breaches. Elena did not have time to hack it or find another route. She shifted Peep to one arm, still breathing for him, and she kicked the door with every ounce of strength she had. The metal dented but did not break. She kicked again and again, each impact sending shockwaves up her leg that would probably leave fractures. Until finally, the lock mechanism shattered and the door flew off its hinges and crashed into the corridor. Beyond at the 1.5-kilometer mark, Elena's vision started to blur from the exertion, and her legs screamed at her to stop. And her arms ached so badly that she could barely feel the children anymore. But she had run further than this before. She had endured worse than this before. Because she was human, and humans were built for endurance. Shaped by millions of years of chasing prey across endless plains until it collapsed from exhaustion. She would not collapse before the children were safe at the 2-kilometer mark. Peep took a breath on his own, a small shuddering gasp that was the most beautiful sound Elena had ever heard. She laughed and cried at the same time, tears streaming down her face as she ran. "That is it, little one," she said through her sobs. "You breathe, you keep breathing." The other children were holding on, scared and sick but alive, and Elena could see the safe zone doors ahead, glowing with clean white light that looked like heaven after the red nightmare of the corridors at 2.7 kilometers. Exactly 11 minutes and 43 seconds after she started running, Elena Vasquez burst through the safe zone doors and collapsed onto the clean floor. She rolled to protect the children from the impact and ended up on her back, staring at the ceiling with the bundles of young aliens spread around her. Medical teams rushed toward her, but she could not hear what they were saying because there was a roaring in her ears. She just held up one bloody hand and pointed at the children. "Them first," she managed to say. "Save them first." And then everything went dark when the station's security teams reviewed the footage later. They counted 27 children delivered to safety. Every single one had survived, including the small blue Corvathi who had clinically died and been revived through direct respiratory intervention while the human was still in motion. They watched the footage in silence. And then they watched it again, and by the time they finished watching it for the third time, their silence had transformed into something else entirely. It had transformed into fear. Elena woke up alone in a room that was too quiet, and for a moment she thought she was back on Earth in a hospital. But then she saw the alien medical equipment floating around her bed and remembered where she was. She tried to sit up, but her body protested with pain in places she did not know could hurt. Her hands were wrapped in bandages. Her legs felt like they were made of stone, and there was a deep ache in her chest from breathing those spores. "Hello?" She called out, and her voice echoed in the empty room. No one answered, and no one came, and Elena began to feel a cold fear creeping up her spine. Where were the doctors? Where were the nurses? Why was she alone? An hour passed before a medical drone floated through the door, and Elena noticed immediately that it kept its distance from her bed, hovering near the far wall like she might attack it. "Please state your current pain level on a scale of 1 to 10, the drone said in a flat, mechanical voice. "Where is everyone?" Elena asked instead of answering. "Where are the children? Are they okay?" "The juveniles are recovering in a separate medical facility," the drone replied. "They are expected to make full recoveries. Please state your current pain level." "I want to see them," Elena said, swinging her legs over the side of the bed despite the agony it caused. "I need to know they are safe." "That will not be possible," the drone said. And Elena heard something in its tone that made her stop moving. "You have been classified as a threat level Sigma entity and are currently under containment protocols. Please remain in the bed." Elena stared at the drone and tried to understand what she was hearing. "What do you mean containment? I did not do anything wrong. I saved those children." The drone did not respond to that. It simply floated backward through the door and left her alone again over the next 3 days. Elena learned the truth in pieces. She learned it from news broadcasts that played on the screen in her room, from overheard conversations outside her door, and from the questions asked by the military analysts who spoke to her through the intercom system. The Galactic Concord had watched the security footage of her rescue, and they had reached a conclusion that made Elena's stomach turn with disbelief and despair. They were afraid of her. Not grateful, not impressed, but genuinely terrified. "Let us review the facts," said a Valkyrie analyst during one of the many briefings that Elena was forced to watch. The Valkyrie were tall beings with 3 eyes and skin like gray leather, and this one spoke with the cold precision of a Vor, scientist examining a dangerous specimen. The human female carried approximately 40 kilograms of weight while running at high speed for nearly 3 kilometers without stopping. For reference, no Concorde species can sustain running for more than 200 meters before cardiac failure. The act of running itself is classified as pursuit predator behavior and is deeply alarming. Elena wanted to scream that running was just exercise, that millions of humans did it every day for fun. But no one was listening to her. Furthermore, the analyst continued, the human female tore through metal panels with her bare hands, suffering significant tissue damage in the process, but not stopping. She then destroyed a reinforced security door using only her lower limbs. The force required for this act exceeds what our models predicted was possible for soft tissue, bipedal organisms on the screen. They showed the footage of Elena kicking the door, and she watched herself become a monster in the eyes of an entire galaxy. Most concerning of all, the analyst said, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. The human performed what her species calls cardiopulmonary resuscitation on a dying juvenile while still in motion. This technique involves forcing air into another being's respiratory system through mouth-to-mouth contact. To our cultural framework, this appears indistinguishable from a predator consuming its prey's breath. Elena felt sick. She had saved Peep's life. She had breath for him when he could not breathe for himself. And they were describing it like she had tried to eat him, and perhaps most terrifying, the analyst concluded, All of this was accomplished by an individual described by her own species as an average civilian female with no military or combat training. She was not a soldier, not an enhanced specimen, not a selected champion. She was simply a human, which forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. The screen changed to show a comparison chart between Elena and human soldiers, complete with projected strength increases and endurance modifications. If this is what an ordinary human can do when mildly motivated to protect strangers, what are their warriors capable of? The broadcast went viral across 1,000 worlds, and Elena's face became the most recognizable human face in the galaxy. But she was not famous as a hero. She was famous as evidence that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the Concorde within days. Humanity's provisional observer status was suspended. Human ships were ordered to return to Earth space. Diplomatic communications went silent, and Elena found herself trapped in a comfortable prison cell where no one would look at her, touch her, or speak to her in person. She sat on her bed and cried for hours because she did not understand how saving children had made her into a monster. She had acted on instinct, the same instinct that any human parent would feel. The same instinct that made humans pull strangers from burning cars and dive into rivers to save drowning swimmers. Was that really so terrifying? On the fourth day, a message appeared on her screen from the Concorde Security Council. It informed her that she would be detained indefinitely for the safety of Concorde citizens, that she would be studied to help develop countermeasures against human capabilities, and that any attempt to escape would be met with lethal force. Elena read the message 3 times and then lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She had crossed the stars to help build bridges between species. She had spent years learning alien languages and customs and beliefs. She had genuinely loved those children she had saved, and now she was a prisoner because she had loved them too much, protected them too fiercely, refused too strongly to let them die outside her window. She could see ships leaving the station, and she wondered if any of them were human ships being sent home in disgrace, carrying the message that humanity was not welcome among the stars. She closed her eyes and wished she could go back to that moment in the forest when the alarms started. But she knew that even if she could, she would make the same choice again. She would always make the same choice, because that was what humans did. 2 weeks passed in silence and isolation, and Elena began to lose track of time. She exercised in her small room to keep her body healthy. She read whatever materials the station system would allow her to access. And she tried very hard not to think about the fact that she might spend the rest of her life in this cell. The doctors who studied her did so remotely through drones and scanners, asking her to perform various physical tasks while they measured her heart rate and muscle output. She cooperated because she had nothing else to do, but she could see in their data how they were building a picture of humanity as a species of unstoppable monsters. Your healing rate is remarkable, one doctor commented through the intercom after examining her hands, which had already begun to close despite the severity of the wounds. Human tissue regeneration exceeds our projections by 40%. We just heal fast, Elena said quietly. It kept us alive on Earth. Yes, the doctor replied. And Elena could hear the fear in his voice, even through the translator. We are beginning to understand just how much your world shaped you on the 15th day. Something changed. Elena was sitting on her bed reading about Kolvathi culture when she heard sounds outside her door that were different from the usual guard shifts. There were many footsteps, too many, and they were accompanied by small, high-pitched voices that made her heart suddenly race. She stood up and walked to the observation window that separated her room from the corridor. And what she saw made tears immediately spring to her eyes. 27 children were walking down the corridor in a solemn line, their various bodies moving with careful purpose. The Kolvathi hopped in perfect synchronization. The Drelnik rolled together in a unified mass. The Ithrani chimed softly with each step. And behind them walked their parents. Dozens of adult aliens who looked confused and scared, but who were not stopping there. Children at the front of the line was a small figure with bright blue feathers that Elena would have recognized anywhere. "Peep," she whispered. Pressing her hand against the glass, the children marched until they reached her window. And then they stopped and arranged themselves in a semicircle facing her cell. Their parents gathered behind them, and Elena noticed that security guards were trying to intervene, but the parents were blocking them. Speaking rapidly about something she could not hear, Peep stepped forward and spoke into the corridor's intercom system. And his small voice came through the speaker in Elena's room. "We are here to perform the death walk," he said. His words formal and careful, like he had practiced them many times. "This is a sacred tradition among all our peoples, and it cannot be stopped by any law or any council." Elena did not know what a death walk was, but she could see the security guards backing away, and she could see the adults bowing their heads with something like respect. When someone saves a life at great cost to themselves, Peep continued, the one who is saved must declare their debt before all witnesses. This debt cannot be transferred, cannot be paid, and cannot be ignored. It binds the saved to the Savior for the rest of their lives. One by one, the children approached the glass and pressed their bodies against it. Feathers touched the surface, tentacles spread across it, crystals chimed against it. And each child spoke a phrase in their own language before their translators converted it to something Elena could understand. "You bled for me," said a small Drelmic whose gelatinous body rippled with emotion. "You carried me when I could not move," said a Ithrani whose crystals glowed warm. "Pink, you breathed life into me," said Peep, and his voice cracked with feeling. "When I was dead, you refused to let me stay dead." Elena was crying openly now, her hands pressed against the glass to mirror the children's touch, wishing desperately that the barrier would disappear so she could hold them when all 27 children had spoken. Peep faced the security camera that was broadcasting the scene throughout the station. "The Galactic Concord calls this human a threat," he said. "They say she is dangerous, that she must be locked away, that her species must be sent back to their world and never allowed to return." He paused and looked at Elena with his large, innocent eyes. "But I was there," he said. "I was dying, and she saved me. She did not have to. I was not her child. I was not even her species, but she saved me anyway. She ran until her feet bled. She broke through walls with her bare hands. She kicked down doors that were supposed to be unbreakable. And she did it all while breathing for me, keeping me alive with her own breath." His small voice grew stronger, and Elena realized that his speech was being broadcast, not just through the station, but through the entire Concord communication network. "She is not a monster," Peep declared. "She is what my people call a mother of the moment, a guardian who appears when a child needs protection. She bled for us, she breathed for us, she nearly died for us. And if you take her away, then you take us too. Because our lives are hers now, our debt is eternal, and we will never abandon her." The other children raised their voices in agreement, a chorus of chirps and chimes and wobbles that somehow harmonized into something beautiful. "She is our guardian," they said together, "and we will not let you hurt her." The broadcast ended, and for a long moment the corridor was silent. Then Elena heard a sound she did not expect. She heard adults crying. The parents of the children had watched their young ones declare a life debt to a human, and something in that act had broken through their fear. They were looking at Elena now, really looking at her, and they were seeing something different than what the security footage had shown. They were seeing a woman who had nearly killed herself to save children who were not her own. One Kovathi father stepped forward, his feathers trembling and he bowed deeply toward Elias' cell. "Forgive us," he said through the intercom. "We were so afraid of what you could do that we did not think about why you did it. You are not a predator hunting prey. You are a mother protecting young. And my people honor that above all things." Other parents joined him, bowing and apologizing, and Elena felt something shift in the air around her. Something that felt like the first crack in a wall that had seemed unbreakable. The footage of the death walk spread across the galaxy within hours, and it sparked a debate that no military analyst had anticipated. Because yes, humans were strong and fast and terrifying, but this human had used all that strength and speed to protect alien children. The question that echoed through 1,000 worlds was no longer, what can humans do to us? It had become something else entirely. What will humans do for us? The doors of Elena's cell opened 3 days after the death walk, and a Velthari official stood in the corridor with an expression that Elena had learned to recognize as embarrassment. "The Security Council has requested your presence," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "You are free to refuse, but they wish to hear from you directly." Elena stood up slowly, feeling her healed legs support her weight without pain for the first time in weeks. "I will speak to them," she said. "I have a lot to say." The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from over 100 species filled those seats, and Elena felt very small as she walked to the center and stood before them all. But she had faced worse odds than this, and she had won. The Velthari who seemed to be leading the council spoke first. Human Elena Vasquez. "You have been brought here to provide testimony regarding your actions during the Varax contamination event. The council will hear your statement and then deliberate on the future of human-concord relations." Elena looked around the room at all the alien faces watching her. Some still showed fear, but others showed something new. Something that might have been curiosity or even hope. "I am going to tell you a story," she said, her voice steady. "A story about where I come from and why I did what I did." She took a breath and began. "Earth is what you call a Class 7 death world, and that name is not wrong. Our world has tried to kill us every single day of our existence. We evolved alongside predators that could tear us apart, diseases that could wipe out entire populations, natural disasters that could destroy everything we built. And somehow, against all odds, we survived." The council listened in silence as she spoke, and Elena let them see the truth in her eyes. "We survived because we learned to work together," she continued. "We are not the strongest species on our planet, not the fastest, not the most dangerous, but we learned to protect each other, to fight for each other, to die for each other if necessary. That instinct to protect is not a sign of our violence. It is the reason we are still alive." She pointed to the screen that still showed her image from the security footage, the frozen frame of her running through smoke with children strapped to her body. "You looked at that footage and saw a monster," she said. "You saw a predator, a threat, something that needed to be contained. But you were wrong." Her voice grew stronger as she felt the weight of what she needed to say. "I was not fighting against anything in those corridors. I was fighting for something. For 27 children who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. For lives that I could not bear to see extinguished. For the simple belief that every child deserves to grow up and see tomorrow." Elena walked closer to the council seats, and she saw some of them lean back in instinctive fear. But she also saw others lean forward, listening intently. "You want to know what humans are capable of?" she asked. "We are capable of running into fire for children who are not our own. We are capable of bleeding and breaking ourselves to protect the innocent. We are capable of staring death in the face and saying, 'Not today. Not these children. Not while I still breathe.'" She turned in a slow circle, meeting as many eyes as she could. "If that terrifies you, then I understand. We terrify ourselves sometimes with what we can do when pushed to our limits. But that power comes from love, not hatred. From the need to protect, not the desire to destroy. Alina stopped and faced the council leader directly. "I am not special," she said firmly. "I am not a soldier, not a warrior, not a selected champion. I am just a scientist who loves children and could not stand by while they died. And if you had been in that corridor with me, if you had heard them crying and gasping for breath, I believe some of you would have done the same thing if your bodies were capable of it." The chamber was absolutely silent. "You have a choice to make," Alina said finally. "You can send humanity away, lock us out of the stars, treat us as monsters to be feared. Or you can welcome us as partners, as friends, as guardians who will fight for you the same way I fought for those children." She let that sink in before delivering her final words. We did not cross the void between stars to conquer or destroy. We came because we were curious, because we wanted to learn, because we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We came looking for family among the stars. And I truly hope, that you will give us a chance to prove that we can be the family you need. Alina bowed her head and stepped back. Signaling that she was done, the council deliberated for 6 hours. And during that time, Alina waited in an anteroom with her heart pounding. She did not know if her words had been enough, if she had managed to change minds that had been made up for weeks, when the doors finally opened and she was called back in. The council leader's expression had changed. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Something that looked almost like respect. "The Galactic Concord has reached a decision," he announced. "Humanity will not be expelled from our community." Alina felt her knees go weak with relief. But the council leader was not finished. "Instead, we propose a new arrangement. Humanity will be granted full membership in the Concord, not as ordinary members, but as a guardian species. Your people will be specifically requested for disaster response, emergency evacuation, child protection services, and defensive operations where other species cannot survive." He paused and looked at Alina with his 3 eyes. "You showed us something we had never considered. You showed us that strength and violence are not the same thing. Your species has the capacity for terrible destruction, but you also have the capacity for incredible protection. We choose to trust in the latter." The Treaty of General Harmony was signed 6 months later, and Elena Vasquez was asked to be one of the human representatives at the ceremony. She stood beside diplomats and politicians and scientists. But she was the one the cameras focused on. The one the children pointed at and whispered about. She was the woman who had shown the galaxy what humans really were. After the ceremony, Elena was offered many positions. She could have been an ambassador, a military advisor, a celebrity speaker, traveling from world to world. But she chose something different. She became the head of the Concord's first Human-Alien Integration Academy, a school where young aliens learned about humans and young humans learned about aliens. She spent her days teaching children that different did not mean dangerous. That fear could become friendship, that the galaxy was big enough for everyone and every year. On the anniversary of the long walk, she received visitors, 27 of them. Some now taller than her, some with children of their own. They came from across the galaxy to spend one day with the woman who had saved them. The woman who had run through poison and smoke and fire to carry them to safety. Peep always arrived first. His blue feathers now streaked with mature purple. And he always greeted her the same way. "Hello, mother of the moment," he would say. And Elena would pull him into a hug that he pretended to protest, but never actually tried to escape on the 10th anniversary. As Elena sat surrounded by her former charges and watched their children play together, Peep asked her a question that no one had ever asked before. "Do you ever regret it?" He asked softly. "The pain, the fear, the way they treated you afterward?" Elena watched a tiny Kovati chick chase a young human boy across the grass, both of them laughing in their own ways, and she smiled, I would do it again, she said, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Because this is what it was all for. Not the fame or the treaties or the history books. This moment, right here, watching all of you live the lives I helped save. Peep leaned against her shoulder. A gesture of trust that would have been unthinkable between their species a decade ago. Thank you, he said. Simply Elena put her arm around him and watched the sun set over a galaxy that no longer feared. Humanity, you are welcome, she replied. And I will always be here if you need me. Because that was what humans did. They protected. They fought. They refused to give up. And sometimes, when they were very lucky, they got to see the children they saved grow up to change the world. Lena Vasquez had only wanted to help supervise a field trip instead. She had helped build a future, and that, she thought, was worth all the pain and all the fear and all the running through fire. That was worth everything.